Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of SciChat. SciChat is a two-part kind of community content thing. Basically, what it is, the first part is what you're listening to right now, 30-minute recorded, about 30 minutes, sometimes longer, sometimes a little bit shorter, but about that of data, slides where I talk about a specific topic every week. This week's topic is going to be buying signals, and I'll explain what that means in a second. But the first half, yeah, is a recorded sort of data-based webinar about a specific topic. The second half, and I think the cooler part of it is actually is a Facebook community of more than 1,000 scientifically minded marketers. That is, marketers who are interested in applying stuff like the data I talk about and the scientific method, experimentation to their marketing efforts. Right, and so that's the interesting part, I think, because I try to stimulate discussion with this video. We'll talk about some of the topics in this video throughout the week on the Facebook page, and we'll talk about some other things. But if you're listening to this some other way, definitely jump on over to Facebook and look up the Facebook group SciChat, SCICHAT. And if this is where you're listening to this video from, awesome! Thanks for being a part of the community, and please go ahead and invite anybody you think who works in the marketing field and loves using data, numbers, analytics, and metrics to apply scientific principles, scientifically grounded best practices to marketing. Now, I call myself a social media scientist. If you've heard me speak before, you know about my unicorns and rainbows thing, where I try to dispel myths and superstitions in marketing, specifically social media, but in marketing in general. Right? Because I find that superstitions are one of the most dangerous things that we as marketers can do that could potentially hurt our results. Right? Superstitions are these ideas that we often have in our head that sound great. Right? Stuff like, you should always reply on Twitter, or replying on Twitter, engaging in conversation on Twitter is the most important thing. It sounds good, right? Because it feels nice. I'm not going to tell you to ignore every one of your Twitter followers, but at the end of the day, the data shows, both empirically, i.e. large data sets and aggregate best practice, and anecdotally, that is when you experiment with your own account, that it is not engaging in the conversation that builds reach. It is not engaging in the conversation that gets followers, or that gets retweets, or any of that kind of thing. And when we go beyond social media into some of the other forms of marketing and into the other aspects of marketing, we find superstitions as well. And honestly, when we get further down the buying funnel, if you will, that's when the superstitions get, I think, potentially more dangerous. Okay, because if at HubSpot, we talk about the buying funnel quite a bit, and we talk about things at the top of the funnel. That is, content like webinars and ebooks and stuff that get shared on Twitter that are really viral, or blog content that gets you subscribed to the blog, or tweets that get you to retweet or follow the Twitter account, or funny posts on Facebook. That's the top of the funnel, just kind of making people aware of our company and our brand, or your company, your brand. And then the middle of the funnel is once I've signed up to your email list, or I've downloaded an ebook, or registered for a webinar, whatever it is. Then you start talking to me about product information. Then we start talking about free demos, right? More product-centric content, webinars about how to use the product, or free trials, for instance. And I'm speaking of this from HubSpot's point of view, but from your point of view, it'd be similar. Start talking about more about what you sell. And then the bottom of the funnel is, or BOFU, right? It's tofu, top of the funnel, MOFU, middle of the funnel, and then BOFU for bottom of the funnel. That's where the rubber meets the road, right? And one of my favorite rap quotes, of course, is, if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. And so if there's anything along this chain that you're doing that doesn't turn into dollars and cents, real actual business at the bottom of the funnel, that BOFU level, then you're doing something wrong. And that bottom of the funnel portion is something that has interested me. I mean, it's always interesting to me because that's where money is made, and that's where people go from followers to leads to actual customers. But what's hard about that level of the funnel and approaching it scientifically is that there are not a ton of great data sets, or companies with access to data sets of a wide variety of types of businesses in different parts of the world, different time zones, different industries, etc., and their lead to customer conversion rates. So, there aren't a whole lot of companies that have access to tens of thousands of companies' data that we can analyze to determine what behaviors indicate that a lead or a contact is ready to buy something, right? And we call these indicators, I call these indicators a buying signal. Right? So that's why the topic here is buying signals. And I actually did a full, 60-minute webinar on it. So if you want some more information after this, then feel free to go check that out. But we're going to go through some of the best hits, the greatest hits today, and you can check that out later. So again, we're talking about something a little different than what we normally talk about. Normally, being a social media scientist, I talk about real top of the funnel stuff, and sometimes leaving it to the middle of the funnel when we talk about email or lead generation. But now we're going to go even further down the funnel because, like I said, there aren't a whole lot of companies with access to that kind of data, but HubSpot is one of them. And now that we have tens of thousands of customers, we can analyze data at that scale and come up with some really interesting insights. So, we'll start a little bit at the top end of the bottom of the funnel, almost the sort of the MOFU. And one of the most interesting pieces of analysis I did here is when you look at landing pages across thousands and thousands of websites, and you look at their visit to lead conversion rate, right? And you look at pages that contain certain words, and you compare them to the rest of the data set of pages that do not contain those words, you find certain words are correlated with those landing pages having higher visit to lead conversion rates. Okay? Meaning, in this graph right here, you see 6 words: webinar, white paper, download, chapter, tools, and report on the bottom of this graph here. And the orange bar represents words that included landing pages that included those words. The gray bars represent landing pages that do not include those words, right? So what you find is that with those 6 words, landing pages that included those words had a higher visit to lead conversion rate. That means when somebody first comes to your site and they are a visitor, when you want to convert them into a lead, that's that middle of the funnel conversion, that's when you need to be offering them content, offers of value. Right? Beyond the value that what you're selling them can give them something actual value, because the visit lead conversion rate is almost sort of a trade, right? It's like I'll give you something of value, you give me your contact information, and I'll move you further down the funnel. And one of the most powerful examples of this effect is a similar analysis, but just with the word free in this case. And what you find is that landing pages that include the word free have a much higher visit to lead conversion rate than landing pages that do not include the word free. So at this middle of the funnel step is when visitors rather, people you don't necessarily have information for, haven't necessarily been exposed to your brand a whole lot, are looking for free information. This is when you gotta start greasing the skids, as it were. This is when you start buttering the bread, whatever kind of analogy you want to use. This is where you're offering a bunch of interesting content, enticing them, pulling them in like a magnet, that real traditional sort of purist inbound marketing analogy, metaphor, enticing them further into the funnel with interesting and free content that offers some kind of value. Tell them you'll teach them how to do something. And regardless of whether or not they buy your product, they're still going to be able to learn something from the content you're offering them. But when we look at BOFU data, okay, that is looking at lead to customer conversion rates, what we find, and so in this section of data, you'll see the word contacts a lot. And what contacts mean in the HubSpot software language is basically anybody who you have information about, okay? So a subscriber is a contact. That's somebody you just have an email address for. Or a lead is also a kind of contact, right? And a customer is also a kind of contact, etc. But basically, we're talking about contact to customer conversion rates here. So what you find is that if you look at pages that include the word free, okay, and you look at the contacts who viewed those pages, right, you'll find that a lower percentage of them eventually become customers. Now, let me reiterate that because we're going to see this style of graph a few more times in this presentation. So I want you to make sure you really understand what this graph is, because we're going to see a few examples of it. The vertical axis here, the up and down axis here, is a percent of contacts who became customers. So that gray bar is all contacts in the database. So millions of contacts that I looked at across, not including HubSpot.com, but including many of our customers. So millions of contacts. Millions of people that our customers have information about, right? Of those contacts, about 11% of them eventually became a customer. At some point in their lifespan, became a customer. But when you look at contacts who viewed a landing page or viewed a page that had the word free in it, that's that orange bar, you see that the percentage of them that became a customer are much lower. Right? It's about 7%-ish. Okay? Meaning, viewing a page with the word free in the title is actually a negative buying signal. Okay? So this does not mean that you need to not use the word free, because we saw in this previous graph that middle of the funnel stuff, like when you're trying to go from I don't know anything about this company to now I'm gonna download an ebook or something from them. That word is powerful at that level. But once you've got their information, once they become a contact, that's when you need to stop using the word free so much necessarily, right? That's when you need to start thinking about qualifying them and figuring out if they're willing, if all they're looking for is free information, right? Because if all they're looking for is free information, there's a good possibility that they may never buy anything from you. So when you're looking across the behavior of all your leads on your website, it is those leads, those contacts, who view fewer of the free pages that are the ones most likely to become a customer. On the flip side, it's a very similar style graph. The gray bar, again, represents that about 11% of all the contacts in the database eventually became customers. But when we look at contacts who viewed pages with the word search in the title, we find that it's more than 40% of them eventually became a customer. That's huge, right? The difference. And if you think about the behavior behind, looking at a page that says free on it versus going to search, those are two different kinds of motivators, right? If I go to a website and I just see the word free, I click on it, I'm just digging around for free information. Maybe I'll buy something down the road, but that's not real top of mind for me. But if I start going to a website, especially if it's not a huge website, and I'm searching on it, that means I'm looking for specific kinds of information. That means I've gone from just foraging for free information to actually doing my homework, right? And especially when you're a B2B company or you're even a B2C with a higher ticket price or just in an industry where people like to do a lot of research, if people start doing research on your website and start looking at search pages, they're really ready to buy. So what that tells us is that we need to think about what is the messaging on those search pages. A lot of times I'll view a company's website and I'll use the search feature, and the search feature feels like an afterthought. Right? It's some weird Google plugin thing that they hooked up for free, doesn't really do a whole lot, and it's not really trying to sell me anything. When you see this kind of data, you should go back to your search page and think about the fact that the people, I can't say that this exact number is exactly true for your business, but in general, over a very large data set, the people who view this search page are some of the most likely people on your site to buy what you're selling, to become a customer. So what are you saying to them on that search page? Are you offering them those free trials, those demos, those contact the sales reps, those more information about what we can do for you kind of offers? Or are you just hitting them with the same old mofu and tofu offers? And then again, when we look at the word about, we find that, again, the orange, and I'm reiterating this just because I want you guys to really grok how this graph works. The gray bar represents 11% of all the contacts in the database eventually became customers. The orange bar represents contacts who viewed pages that had the word about in the title. They had a little under 14% of them became customers. So the effect is not as strong as the search page, but it's pretty good as well. Meaning, once you go from just looking for free stuff to doing your homework through search functionality or just going through the about page, that's when you're trying to find out about the company. That's when you're trying to really get to know the company, get to know the products, get to know the people behind the products in the company to buy what they're selling. So again, I go to a lot of websites and I look at the about page and it's an afterthought in many cases. Right? If I go to an about page, I don't want to see one paragraph with a really jargon-filled mission statement that's like, we endeavor to give the best enterprise solutions for leveraging productivity. You know what I mean? I want to know who you are. I want to know where you are. I want to know what you do. I want to know why you do it. I want to know what makes you different from other people. That about page is a key selling page. Think about a high ticket price item. Are you really going to buy that without at least glancing at the about page a couple times? I generally don't. And so that about page, much like the search pages, are much often forgot about pages, but turn out, according to the data, to be extremely important pages to think about. And then, when we go back to a word like download, which is more in the free category, we see that same negative buying signal effect. Okay, meaning that again, 11% of all contacts eventually become customers, but it ends up only being about 4 or 5% of contacts who view pages that have the word download in the title that become customers. So again, don't take this to mean that you shouldn't be offering free downloadable content. Take this to mean that you need to focus your BOFU efforts. That is, trying to entice people to convert to trials, demos, the salesperson contacts, however you label that in your company, add the shopping cart if you're doing e-commerce or B2C. You need to be talking to them not so much like that on the download pages or on the free pages. It's on those other pages, right? And so use things like free and download and webinar, white paper, report, all that kind of stuff to generate middle of the funnel content. But once you've got them in the middle of the funnel, start thinking about how you're speaking to them, especially if they're doing their research. And something like dynamic content or smart content can help you do this, right? And so that's one of the features of HubSpot software, or really any great marketing automation software. HubSpot's just the most awesomest, is that you can target certain kinds of CTA to people who to contacts who have a higher likelihood to become a customer, right? You can show those more aggressive bottom of the funnel offers to those people, in these places where they're really looking for them. And that's a really key transition from just doing inbound marketing at the top of the funnel to doing inbound marketing really well and really sophisticated inbound marketing towards the bottom of the funnel where the rubber meets the road. And then when we make a jump over to email subjects, right? So what I was also able to do is look at the email activity. So in this contacts database that I put together, millions of contacts, I was also able to see the emails that were sent to them. Okay, and what I found is that there are certain words that are both positive and negative buying signals as far as their interaction, as far as contacts' interaction with those emails. Meaning, again, the graph is similar here. So all contacts who clicked on emails, as the gray bar here, it's about 20% of them. Now that's different than the original 11% because this is a subset of that list of contacts, right? These are all the contacts who clicked any email that was sent to them, right? The previous 11% conversion was all contacts in general. They didn't have to have clicked on an email to be included in that. So this is a subset of that. So I'm comparing that here to contacts who clicked emails with a subject containing the word download. So again, we find that those had a lower chance to become customers. Okay. So again, when you're doing that top of the funnel, that middle of the funnel, and you're sending download this webinar or register for this webinar, download this white paper, that kind of stuff. That's great. That's wonderful to get people into the funnel. Once they're into the funnel, once they start exhibiting some of these buying signals, maybe they're using the search feature, maybe they're using the about page, that's when you might want to start rewording your emails and start, not offering them so much downloadable content, trying to figure out other things you can offer them through email and through the website that will convince them to move further down the funnel. Again, another example of this kind of language that you may want to avoid when you have an indication that somebody is closer to buying, they're already in the middle of the funnel, is the word resources. Right. And so this is pages with titles, including the word resources. So we're back to page views, not just email subjects. But again, it's that information seeker, rather the forager for free information. Right. It's not there's nothing wrong with these people. They're not bad people. The primary reason that they're on your website right now, the primary reason they're interacting with your brand is to gather free information, is to take advantage of the offers you're giving them. And that is not bad. That just means that they're towards the top of the middle of the funnel, right? Tofu/mofu. Right? They're not quite at the bottom of the funnel. So maybe you don't want to be as aggressive with folks, who are viewing pages with resources on them. But what this also means is that maybe when somebody is in the middle of the funnel, you want to steer them away from these kind of pages and towards pages that more about style pages or more aggressive pages. Another one is guide. Right, if folks are really are clicking emails, this is an email one, not a page view, but email. If folks are really interested in email language that includes guide, then you can be. There's a slight. I mean, I wouldn't totally discount those people, and that's really not what any of this is to say. What this is to say is that when you're setting up your workflows, when you're setting up your marketing automation to send messages to people in certain parts of the buying process, further down the funnel, when it's time to convert them, when it's time to get them to buy something, stay away from those top of the funnel offers like guides, downloads, resources, that kind of thing. But tips, on the other hand, this one's interesting because at face value, there isn't a whole lot of difference between resources, guides, and tips. So again, this is an email one, and the difference isn't huge. And in fact, I wouldn't say that it necessarily has a huge positive impact, but it's about, in parity. So it's about the same. It doesn't have a big negative impact. And I think the difference between something like resources or guide or download and tips is that tips is when content starts to become more tactical, more technical. Right, because what tips could be is just, and I'm just using the HubSpot example just because it's the easiest one for me to come up with examples for, but could be tips to getting the most out of your HubSpot portal, right? Tips to getting the most out of HubSpot software, tips to getting the most out of what we're going to sell you, right? And I guess guide could be used in that term too, but guide and resources, those seem like standalone pieces of content, offers of value. Tips seem like something nice that go along with something of value, and that something of value in this case is going to be the product or service you're selling. So really, I think that's the lesson at the end of all this, right? Is at the top of the funnel, the value is a standalone offer, right? The thing that you're offering them that has value is the ebook, the webinar, the white paper, the download, the funny infographic on Facebook, the funny meme on Facebook, the silly tweet on Twitter. When you move into the funnel more, the offer of value becomes what you're selling them, and the content kind of becomes the dressing for that. Right? So tips is a little more of the sizzle, whereas the steak in this case is probably the thing you're selling them. And then we see the word services. Again, when you start using the word services and people start viewing pages, because it's a page view, not an email subject line, but when people start viewing pages with the word services on it, this is when they're looking at your products and services, right? This is when they're actually interested, because it's pretty well understood that a service is something you pay for, right? And so this page, people who view services do tend to convert to customers at a bit of a higher rate than all the other contacts in the database, right? And so when you see that people are ready to start moving down into the funnel, start giving them information about your services. Start thinking, how can I communicate to them what I can do for them, right? Because again, that offer of value is shifting from the free resources and the free content, all the free stuff, to the thing that they're going to have to pay for. I mean, that's what the real value was all along anyways, right? That was what the serious value was. And so you start talking about your services. Don't be afraid to talk about your services either. Nobody likes a real aggressive used car salesman approach, but we are in business to make money. So don't be afraid, even as a marketer, not a salesperson, to start being a little more salesy and to start talking about your products and services and start talking about what you can do for your customers once they start paying you, which is really what the page with the word services in the title is all about. Questions is another one. And I think this really has to do with things like frequently asked questions, because if I'm about to buy something, especially if it's expensive, I kind of want to cross my T's and dot my I's. I kind of want to know, all right, what are the questions, what are the issues I may come across, where are the areas I may get into trouble, where are the areas I may need a little bit of help, and have you thought through all of them? Or maybe I have a couple of reservations still about buying your service or product, and an FAQ page, a questions page, is a great place to address those, right? Because I'm sure your sales team, or even maybe you as marketers, get a lot of the same questions over and over again. So really take some time and work on a questions page where most of the concerns, most of the doubts, many of the objections for buying what you're selling are addressed. Because it is on those pages where people are going to start to try to minimize their assumption of risk, right? They're going to start to say, okay, I think this is what I want. I just want to sort of cover my butt here and make sure I'm not doing something really silly, right? And so really focus on those FAQ pages. Think about directing people from about pages or from search pages to frequently asked questions pages, from services pages to those frequently asked questions pages, so you can start to assuage their fears about doing business with you. Because, I mean, in any sale, there's going to be some anxiety, right? If I'm parting with money for something I don't already own, especially on the web when I can't touch it, feel it, or I don't know exactly, I can't talk to the person who's going to offer it to me, there can be some trepidation. So a thank you, or excuse me, a questions page is a great place to start to assuage those. Now, this data here makes me pretty sad because webinars are like my favorite kind of content to offer, but it turns out that people who click on emails the word webinar in the subject line tend to convert to customers at a lower rate than people who click emails in general, right? Because all contacts who clicked email, about 20% of them became a customer, and it's about 12, 13, 11% of them who clicked on emails containing the word webinar became customers. Now, again, I love webinars for building out the middle of the funnel, for taking people from the top of the funnel and putting them into the middle of the funnel. But most webinars are done as top of the funnel things. I think there is some opportunity to use a webinar as sort of a group demo, if you will, and start to make it more about services and questions and about us as a company and about, here's how you can get the most out of what we can do for you and how to get the most out of us for your money and that sort of thing. But generally speaking, you're really going to want to focus your webinars on the top of the funnel kind of activities. Ebook has a slightly positive effect, but again, the effect is so small that I think we really should be talking about as it's about equal with sort of general email clicking rates, converting into customers, and so you can, if you still want to do some offer type stuff down towards the bottom of the funnel, think about ebooks or think about white papers, because an ebook can be like a guide to your first month with our product or with our service, right? That kind of stuff, or tips for your first month. Remember, the guide's a bad word, tip's a good word. For your first month with our service, that kind of thing. Right. So again, it pains me to show webinars doing worse than ebooks on this particular front, but it's the truth, and I don't want to sugarcoat or hide anything just to serve my own personal agenda. So that's the end of the data this week. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It's a little bit different than what we normally talk about, and I think there's a lot of interesting differences between the way inbound marketing works at the top of the funnel, in the middle of the funnel, and how it works at the bottom of the funnel. Because at the top of the funnel, it's all about offering this free content, right? The value you're offering people, that you're enticing them with, is an ebook, a webinar. It's they're standalone offers. They have substantial value to them. But at the end of the day, when somebody starts getting through that funnel towards buying something, that's when the offer becomes a thing you can sell them. And you can't lose sight of that, because as marketers, we're not here only to offer free content. We are here also to offer things to buy, to make money, to pay to pay the bills. So thank you guys all for listening. I look forward to seeing you all in the Facebook group this week. Bye-bye.